You know, when you picture the classic historic home, there are a few, like, architectural signatures that immediately come to mind. You might envision a wraparound porch or,
Oh, original stained glass windows, for sure.
right, stained glass, and almost always you picture this stately, perfectly aged brick chimney anchored to the roof line.
Yeah, the classic look.
Exactly. It
Ah.
looks solid, right? It looks permanent. But what if I told you that picturesque historic brick chimney isn't just a charming detail?
Mm-hmm.
What if it might actually be, well, a hidden ticking time bomb for the entire property?
It's crazy to think about because we look at brick and mortar and we just assume invincibility.
Right, like it's rock.
Exactly. It is
Okay.
literally the material from the story of the Three Little Pigs,
Okay.
right? The one that withstands the wolf.
The bad wolf can't blow it down.
Yeah, but the reality of what is happening on a microscopic structural level is just, it's a totally different narrative.
And unpacking that narrative is our mission for today's deep dive. We are pulling from a really fascinating collection of service guides, articles, and field notes from Select Chimney Services.
Authored by John Constantine, right?
Yes, out of Portland, Maine.
Which is, I mean, coastal New England is arguably the perfect testing ground for this material.
Oh, absolutely.
The weather there is notoriously unforgiving. It provides this high-stakes masterclass in how environmental stress interacts with masonry over decades.
Right. So we are going to explore this silent war being waged between harsh coastal weather and building materials.
It really is a war.
We'll uncover how to spot the invisible signs of structural failure long before, a catastrophe hits your living room. And we'll figure out how to know whether a chimney needs a targeted microscopic fix or
total demolition.
yeah, total demolition. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to really grasp what is happening to these historic structures, we have to kind of rethink the material itself.
We do.
We look at a brick wall, and we think of it as solid rock. But based on the mechanics described in these guides, we really need to conceptualize brick and mortar as, well, rigid, heavy sponges.
Sponges is the perfect word for it. They're naturally porous materials. I mean, fired clay and traditional mortar, they're filled with this vast network of microscopic voids.
Capillaries, right.
Yeah, voids and capillary.
Which means they behave just like a sponge when exposed to driving rain.
Right.
The text mentions this term, capillary action.
Right.
So when a coastal storm hits the side of a house, the untreated masonry doesn't just block the water like a raincoat.
No, not at all.
The surface tension of the water allows it to literally defy gravity and pull itself deep into those tiny microscopic voids. It's just drinking in the coastal humidity and precipitation.
And see, if that moisture remained liquid, you'd have a damp chimney, sure, but perhaps not a structural crisis.
Right, it's just wet.
Exactly. But you have to factor in the specific climate of a place like Portland.
Oh, the winters.
Right. You have relentless winter precipitation, followed immediately by intense freezing temperatures. And this creates a ruthless freeze-thaw cycle.
Yeah, the cycle's what gets you.
During the day or early evening, water easily penetrates that porous surface. Then the temperature plummets below freezing overnight.
And the phase change from liquid to solid is where the damage actually occurs.
What's fascinating here is the sheer physics of it. When that trapped water turns into ice, it expands by roughly 9%.
9%, that sounds small, but
But we all know water expands when frozen, right? Like leaving a soda can in the freezer. But consider the application here. You have this microscopic 9% expansion happening inside thousands of confined, rigid voids.
what?
It generates immense outward tensile pressure inside the brick itself.
I'm trying to picture the mechanical stress of that.
Yeah.
Because historic brick has high compressive strength, right? Like it can hold a lot of weight stacked on top of
Oh,
it.
definitely.
But it has terrible tensile strength. It can't handle being pushed apart from the inside.
It cannot. Over multiple seasons, spanning decades of this continuous freeze-thaw cycle.
Just constantly expanding and contracting.
Exactly. That internal pressure simply forces the masonry apart. It shatters the structural integrity of even the most robust historic materials.
And the sources outline specific physical manifestations of this process that you can actually watch out for from the ground. Like you can see this happening.
Yes, there are visual cues.
The first one they mention is spalling. From my understanding, this is when the outward pressure of the ice finally overcomes the strength of the brick's outer surface,
Yeah, it just gives way.
causing the face of the brick to literally flake off or pop out of the structure entirely.
You'll look at a chimney and notice the bricks appear to be peeling almost, or they are missing their smooth, fired outer layer, and it exposes the rougher, softer interior clay.
And that's spalling.
That is spalling. It is undeniable proof that moisture is freezing inside the structure.
Okay, then there's another visual cue that sounds completely harmless, but indicates a massive breach. Efflorescence.
Efflorescence, yes. This presents as a powdery, white residue on the exterior of the brickwork.
Almost looks like snow, right?
Yeah. It often gets mistaken for a light dusting of snow, or maybe some chalk.
But if capillary action is pulling water in, I'm assuming the water isn't perfectly pure.
Not at all.
It's moving through the masonry, dissolving calcium and natural salts present in the mortar, and then carrying those minerals out to the surface.
Exactly. And the water eventually evaporates, but it leaves those mineral deposits behind.
Just sitting there on the brick.
Right. Efflorescence is the residual footprint of water travel. If you see that white powder, you know definitively that water is actively flowing through the interior of your masonry.
Man, that's wild. So that covers the exterior shell.
Oh.
But the sources point out an even more vulnerable area that, let's be honest, most homeowners completely ignore.
Oh, completely.
You have to look at the invisible interior of the chimney.
The flue.
The flue.
The exhaust corridor venting the toxic byproducts of the home's heating system.
And there's an incredible irony highlighted here. You know, a homeowner will spend weeks in autumn preparing for winter.
Insulating pipes, checking the weather stripping.
Sealing drafty windows, tuning up the central heating furnace. But they completely neglect the structure, tasked with safely exhausting the carbon monoxide and 1,000-degree gases generated by that system.
Because it's out of sight, out of mind, people assume if the exterior brick looks relatively intact, well, the internal exhaust system must be perfectly fine.
But when that internal system degrades, you are leaving the combustible structural framing of your home, like the wood in your attic and walls, completely exposed to stray sparks and extreme thermal heat.
It's incredibly dangerous.
And the text provides a really clear list of warning signs for a failing flue. You might find crumbling flakes of clay accumulating down in the firebox.
Yeah, little pieces of the liner just dropping down.
Exactly. Or you might see water stains showing up on the interior drywall or the ceiling right next to the chimney breast.
Which is a huge red flag. Interior water stains indicate that the moisture has entirely bypassed the exterior masonry. It has saturated the flue and is now actively invading your living space.
It also messes with the thermodynamics of the fireplace, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Like you might experience smoke backing up into the room because the draft is compromised.
Or you might notice foul, acidic odors radiating from the hearth,
Ugh.
especially on heavy, humid days in the summer.
What causes that smell?
That acidic smell is the interaction of humidity with creosote and soot that has leaked through cracks in the flue lining. It tells you the airtight seal of the corridor is broken.
Okay, wait. If traditional clay tiles are so rigid, porous, and prone to cracking under rapid heating and cooling cycles, why are they in all these century-old historic homes in Cumberland County to begin with?
It's a fair question.
It just seems counterintuitive for builders to use something so vulnerable to thermal shock.
Well, context is crucial here. It isn't that clay was a flawed material for its era. It was actually the industry standard, and it performed reasonably well for a long time.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a mistake.
No. But it is an outdated building material that is simply reaching its physical thermodynamic limit. I mean, these homes were built in the 19th and early 20th centuries.
Right, they're old.
Those clay tiles have been subjected to over 100 years of extreme temperature fluctuations, from sub-zero winter nights to the sudden, intense heat of a roaring fire.
So they absorb condensation and atmospheric moisture just like the exterior bricks do. And then we light a fire that spikes the internal temperature by hundreds of degrees in a matter of minutes.
Exactly. And under the stress of thousands of those rapid heating and cooling cycles, the physical limits of the clay are exceeded.
They just give up.
They become brittle, they crack, they shift, they crumble. It is less of a design flaw and more of an expiration date that the entire region is hitting simultaneously.
That makes a lot of sense. Homeowners are basically inheriting a century of hidden wear and tear.
Yes, exactly.
Fortunately, modern engineering offers a definitive upgrade. The sources advocate heavily for stainless steel liners.
They are the gold standard now. Replacing deteriorated clay with a stainless steel liner fundamentally changes the safety profile of the chimney.
How so?
Well, these are continuous, flexible, or rigid metal alloys that run the entire length of the flue.
And metal obviously changes the game regarding moisture. It doesn't absorb water, so you eliminate the freeze-thaw vulnerability internally right off the bat.
Precisely.
Plus, these specific alloys are designed to handle rapid thermal expansion without shattering the way brittle clay does.
They provide a seamless, completely airtight corridor. Smoke, extreme heat, carbon monoxide, and acidic creosote are securely guided out of the home. They are fully isolated from the surrounding porous masonry and, most importantly, the wooden framing of the house.
Okay, so we've established how both the exterior masonry and the interior flues physically break down.
The fun part.
Right, now we need to explore the interventions required to actually save the structure. The sources detail two distinct paths based on the severity of the deterioration. And the primary, preferred intervention for historic preservation is tuckpointing.
Tuckpointing, yes. It is an incredibly meticulous process.
From what I read, it sounds like surgery.
It really is. It involves the painstaking removal of deteriorated mortar joints, specifically targeting the mortar that has dissolved into fine powder, lost its bonding strength, or cracked due to expansion.
So you aren't tearing down the chimney. You are essentially performing targeted microscopic surgery on the joints themselves.
Exactly.
You grind out the failing material, replace it with fresh mortar, and seal the gaps to prevent future water intrusion. But I imagine the chemistry of that replacement mortar is critical. You can't just slap modern high-strength concrete between 150-year-old bricks, right?
You absolutely cannot, and that is a vital point in masonry repair. Modern Cortland cement is extremely hard. Historic brick is relatively soft.
Okay, so what happens if you mix them?
If you put a hard, rigid mortar between soft bricks, the next time the structure naturally shifts or experiences thermal expansion, the mortar won't give.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, the pressure will transfer directly into the brick, causing the brick itself to shatter.
Ouch.
So tuckpointing requires matching the compressive strength and vapor permeability of the new mortar to the historic brick.
That's fascinating. And when executed properly, it perfectly matches the existing aesthetics, preserving the historic charm of the neighborhood.
You won't even know it was repaired.
But beyond aesthetics, it restores the structural integrity of the wall. A professionally tuck-pointed chimney can extend the lifespan of the structure by 15 to 25 years.
It offers a massive return on investment, provided you catch the damage early enough, because there is a structural tipping point where surface repairs are no longer physically viable.
Which leads us to the second intervention, demolition.
The dreaded word.
Yeah. The text is unambiguous about the severe structural signs that mandate tearing the chimney down. Like, if you have a leaning or totally unstable structure, that is an immediate safety hazard.
It's no longer just a water problem at that stage. The center of gravity has shifted.
Right.
Severe cracking that runs deeply through the masonry blocks themselves, rather than just the mortar joints, that indicates comprehensive failure.
And the most critical sign is the chimney actively pulling away or separating from the side of the house.
Yes, when you see that gap forming.
Because the framing of the house is literally holding the masonry up at that point.
It's terrifying.
Now, demolition isn't always a total leveling of the structure either. The sources mention partial demolition, where contractors might only remove the top several feet that have taken the brunt of the weather above the roofline.
Right, the most exposed part.
There's full exterior removal and even interior chimney removal, which is often utilized during modern renovations when a massive central chimney is no longer functional but is taking up valuable floor space.
Ultimately, the goal of demolition is to safely eliminate the hazard before gravity and weather induce a catastrophic, uncontrolled collapse onto the roof or the surrounding property.
So what does this all mean? We are looking at vastly different scales of intervention, which translates to vastly different financial realities for the property owner.
Huge differences.
The pricing depends on several key variables, like the overall height and volume of the chimney, the accessibility of the structure. I mean, working on a steep, multi-story roof pitch requires complex scaffolding.
Oh, yeah, the labor goes way up.
And just the sheer extent of the material degradation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the financial strategy becomes clear. Early intervention via tuck-pointing is magnitudes more affordable than funding a full structural rebuild or demolition.
Because you are locked in a race against the continuous 9% expansion of freezing water.
You can't pause physics.
Right. Intervene early, and you save the historic materials. Delay, and you forfeit the entire structure.
And there is a detail in the FAQ section of the source material regarding insurance that homeowners really need to hear.
Yes, the insurance part.
Many property owners operate under the assumption that if their chimney begins to fall apart, well, their homeowner's insurance will automatically cover the rebuild.
But relying on insurance for masonry decay is a dangerous financial gamble.
It really is. Homeowners' insurance policies are generally underwritten to cover sudden, unexpected, and accidental damage.
So if a massive coastal gale drops an oak tree onto your roof and smashes the chimney, you are covered.
Right, that's an act of God. That's sudden.
But the slow, inevitable process of capillary action, decades of water penetration causing the mortar to slowly dissolve into fine powder.
That is classified as normal wear and tear. It falls entirely under the umbrella of standard homeowner maintenance.
Which means if you ignore the early visual cues of spalling and efflorescence until the chimney is leaning and requires a full demolition, you will almost certainly be funding that five-figure project entirely out of pocket.
It's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
Definitely. And this highlights the necessity of a holistic defense strategy. Fixing a broken chimney is an exercise in futility if you don't address the environmental mechanisms driving water into the house in the first place.
You have to look at the entire exterior ecosystem.
Yeah. And there was a service listed in this material that initially struck me as odd.
Oh, the gutters.
Yeah. Select Chimney Services is a dedicated masonry and flue company, yet they prominently feature gutter cleaning and repair as a core service.
It seems like a strange crossover at first glance. Like, why would a mason care about the aluminum troughs hanging off the edge of your roof?
Right.
But it speaks to a comprehensive understanding of how structural decay accelerates. It all comes back to water management.
Because a properly functioning exterior drainage system is designed to catch the sheer volume of water shedding off a roof and direct it safely away from the foundation.
And during a Maine nor'easter, we are talking about hundreds of gallons of water.
Exactly. When debris clogs that system, the water doesn't just stop flowing. It overflows the trough and seeks the path of least resistance downward.
And frequently, that path of least resistance is right down the vertical face of the masonry.
Just a waterfall on the chimney.
Clogged gutters act like a funnel, forcing concentrated cascades of overflowing water directly onto the mark. This supercharges the capillary action we discussed earlier.
It hyperconcentrates the freeze-thaw cycles in one specific area, accelerating decay from the roof deck all the way down to the basement walls. So managing water flow at the roof line is actually the first line of defense for the chimney.
It absolutely is.
The text also emphasizes chimney waterproofing as a critical barrier against capillary action.
Waterproofing is huge.
If bricks are rigid sponges, waterproofing is how you seal the surface of the sponge. But I assume you can't just paint the bricks with waterproof rubber, or you'd trap the internal moisture we talked about earlier.
Exactly, and you've hit on a crucial distinction in material science here. Professional masonry waterproofing utilizes specialized silane or siloxane sealants.
Okay, and what do those do?
These products are vapor permeable. They create a molecular barrier that is small enough to prevent liquid water droplets from entering the microscopic voids from the outside, but large enough to allow gaseous water vapor to escape from the inside.
So it can still breathe.
It can breathe. It fundamentally alters the brick's interaction with the environment. It repels the driving rain, ensuring there is no liquid water trapped inside the voids waiting to freeze, expand by 9%, and shatter the mark.
You are effectively short-circuiting the freeze-thaw cycle without suffocating the masonry.
Exactly. It's brilliant chemistry.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Armed with this knowledge regarding water damage, thermal shock, and the staggering out-of-pocket costs of delayed maintenance, homeowners in Portland are initiating a massive behavioral shift.
Yes, the scheduling shift.
The sources detail a localized change in how people are scheduling this work.
It's an economically rational shift, really. I mean, human nature usually dictates reactive maintenance. We wait until we need the fireplace on the first freezing night of autumn to suddenly remember, oh, we haven't booked a chimney sweep or a structural inspection in 3 years.
Right. And the text notes a critical sequencing rule. A professional inspection should always occur before any sweeping or brushing begins.
Yes, to ensure the internal structure is sound enough to withstand the actual cleaning process.
But because the entire region traditionally waits until October, Local service companies experience a massive chaotic bottleneck.
It's just impossible to get someone out there. So proactive property owners are now actively booking these comprehensive masonry inspections and sweeping services in the spring and early summer.
They are completely bypassing the traditional autumn rush.
The tactical advantages are significant. You secure optimal availability with top-tier professionals, but the primary benefit is analytical.
How so?
Well, you are identifying and diagnosing weather-related damage inflicted during the previous winter and fixing it long before the next harsh New England winter arrives.
Oh, that's smart. You aren't scrambling in November with compromised, cracked clay flue or spalling bricks. You are addressing the microscopic vulnerabilities while the weather is warm, dry, and actually conducive to curing fresh tuck-pointing mortar or applying that vapor-permeable waterproofing.
It represents the ultimate preventative posture. Acting in the off-season guarantees your structural masonry is secure and your heating system is safe long before you strike the first match of the season.
We have covered incredible ground today.
We really have.
We completely dismantled the illusion of solid brick, revealing it as a rigid sponge, heavily susceptible to the capillary action of coastal moisture.
The freeze-thaw cycle is relentless.
It is. We explore the invisible dangers of outdated clay flues cracking under thermal shock and venting toxic gases. We examine the intricate chemistry and preservation art of tuck pointing versus the stark, dangerous reality of total structural demolition.
And we saw how managing water flow through clean gutters, applying vapor-permeable waterproofing, and shifting maintenance schedules to the spring can literally save a property from catastrophic failure. Understanding the underlying physics and material science completely reframes your perspective on the built environment around you.
It really does.
Which leaves you with a final lingering thought to consider. The next time you are out for a walk down a beautiful tree-lined street in a historic neighborhood, taking in those stunning 19th century homes look up at the roof lines,
Yeah.
are you really looking at monuments of architectural resilience? Or, knowing what we now know about outdated clay and porous brick, are you actually looking at a neighborhood of hidden ticking clocks where decades of delayed maintenance are quietly waiting to trigger a cascade of structural failures?